The Falcons offense has exploded since Michael Penix has entered the lineup. We'll tell you why we are buying them in the future on this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions apply. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Madjuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. On today's show, we are breaking down all of the games in Week 18. Kate, usually it's not a good idea to overreact to what we see in Week 18 because most of these games really don't matter. But I do want to talk about the Falcons, who have now scored at least 30 points in each of Michael Penix's 3 starts this year. They scored 38 points against Carolina, and I couldn't be more excited about this offense moving forward.
I mean, this has been a drastic turnaround from, we think about what we were seeing under Kirk Cousins and just the staleness and the problematic turnovers, the everything that's, came out of the Kirk Cousins offense was not fruitful. But guess what? We're seeing Michael Penix under center. We're seeing ball movement. We're seeing, a general, I think, decreased lack of turnovers. And yeah, it hasn't been perfect, but I think we're seeing just how productive this offense can be. And what that's meant is a lot of fantasy points being scored for some of these assets that we went all in on with high levels of talent, like Bijan Robinson, like Drake London, who absolutely balled out here in Week 18. I don't think what we've seen over the last 2 weeks is, they missed the playoffs, right? But I don't think we can consider the end of their season a failure because Mike Penix is looking like the real deal.
The only thing I think is a failure is that they just didn't start Michael Penix earlier, because you can see this offense is just clicking at a different level. And again, this is a rookie quarterback who's coming in and lighting it up. Michael Penix and his dynasty value, I'm just not all that interested in because he's not really a runner. He's going to have to post big passing numbers to have fantasy value. But in the case of Drake London has averaged over 117 yards per game with Michael Penix at quarterback. Bijan Robinson has scored 6 touchdowns in the 3 games that Michael Penix has played. He's rushed for at least 90 yards in all 3 of them. Against the Panthers, 28 carries for 170 yards and 2 touchdowns. The stars are getting fed with Michael Penix, and that's what we are hoping would happen with Kirk Cousins. It did at times this year, but as Kirk kind of, his play decreased as the year went on, it started to really impact Bijan, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Darnell Mooney. I'm kind of buying everybody on this offense going into the offseason.
Well, yeah, and here's the thing about Kirk Cousins. We're not buying into the dynasty value of Michael Penix, like you said, because of the fact that he is going to have to be absurdly productive as a passer. And I do think that they want to establish the run with Bijan Robinson. I think they want to achieve some semblance of balance here in this offense. But I think what is key is that he's not killing momentum on drives. No. And that's what we were seeing with Kirk Cousins that was so problematic because, when you have these turnovers, you're taking the ball out of the offense's hands. They're running fewer offensive plays. You're obviously not as efficient on offense. But, we are looking at, I think, a very bright future here. Over the past 3 weeks, the Falcons have tied for the 7th highest average yards per play. They've just looked really good, 7th in EPA per play. They're visiting the red zone very often, 4th in red zone plays run over the past 3 weeks, 4th in goal line plays. This is a team, those are all situations that put fantasy managers in contention for some scoring plays. So yeah, I think we're finally going to see Drake London meet this kind of wide receiver one expectation that we knew he was capable of from the jump.
Where do you think Drake London finished this year among all receivers in fantasy points, PPR leagues?
Ooh, after yesterday, are we counting yesterday?
Yep, after yesterday.
I would have to envision wide receiver 9, 7.
Wide receiver 5, only behind Jamar Chase, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Justin Jefferson, and Brian Thomas Jr. The last time that he's had a single-digit fantasy performance was in Week 8 against Tampa Bay. He had just 2 all season long. Week 1 against Pittsburgh, Week 8 against Tampa Bay. I mean, he was pretty consistent all year. There were a couple big spike weeks that he had against Carolina, against Tampa Bay. I just wonder he's 23 years old. I wonder with a little bit better quarterback play, if he doesn't have the ceiling to be like a top 3 fantasy receiver. And I think even in dynasty leagues, he's being valued outside the top 10 receivers. I think that's a mistake.
Yeah. And I think, again, this is not a evaluation that comes out of nowhere. We always knew that Drake London and the skill set he brings to the table is one that could be very conducive to fantasy scoring. He's a big-bodied wide receiver who you can put in contested catch situations, but guess what? He can move extremely well, and not every situation has to be a contested catch situation. Drake London, he was my favorite wide receiver in his respective class, and I think, again, we're just finally starting to see the stars align in terms of circumstances, which has not been the case to this point in his career. We're just finally, I think, going to get that opportunity here with him.
Bijan Robinson finished as the number 3 running back this year. He was obviously fantastic. I want to ask you about Kyle Pitts. Do you want to guess where Kyle Pitts finished among tight ends?
Tight end 15?
Yeah, exactly. Tight end 15.
Is it really?
Yeah. Average,
I had no idea.
Average 7.7 points in full PPR leagues. Pretty rough. But what do we think happens with Kyle Pitts? Because my gut tells me that they trade him this offseason and get more of a traditional tight end to pair with London, Bijan Robinson, and Mooney. What do you think?
I think that would probably be a smart move. With the way that they're structuring things, with the success they're having in the run game, I think it makes sense to get maybe more of a traditional like inline guy instead of, more of a slot guy who can maybe split out wide on occasion. But I do think that there are some teams that like know how to utilize a receiving tight end. What is the best potential landing spot? Because I do think you're right. I think especially, Kyle Pitts, he might want just a bit of a refresh in terms of the bumps he's had along the road. If you could send him to any spot to maintain any sort of dynasty value, where would you send Kyle Pitts this offseason?
Kansas City to replace Travis Kelce.
But
the thing is, he's actually not a Travis Kelce replacement because their roles are very different.
Yeah.
But could I see the Chiefs flipping a 3rd-round pick for Kyle Pitts, who is, still on a rookie contract, just to try to give them something different? Sure. I won't be surprised if there's several teams out there who believe they can fix Kyle Pitts. And maybe, Kate, it's as simple as he just needs a change of scenery. Maybe he gets healthier as he gets further removed from this knee injury. But I do think it's probably time for the parties to head for a divorce.
Yeah, and again, that's not always a bad thing. He's only 24 years old. He has been incredibly underwhelming to this point in his career. 600 receiving yards, 4 touchdowns. I'm going to be honest, it doesn't even feel like he hit that 600 receiving yard mark because
it was rough.
It's just been such rough sledding. But I do think, I don't think his collegiate production was a fluke.
Or year 1 production, 1,000 yards as a rookie. He was only the second tight end ever to do it.
Exactly. So I think that I don't think that Kyle Pitts is just a bad tight end. I think there are a lot of extenuating circumstances here, but I mean, heck, we just saw Johnny Smith post a top 5 tight end season at the age of 29. Probably not time to give up on the 24-year-old Kyle Pitts. So honestly, if somebody's giving him away, I'll jump on that.
Which maybe it's just Atlanta is a bad spot for tight ends because Jonnu Smith was in Atlanta last year. He leaves and now he has a fantastic season. So I'm not completely giving up on Pitts, but the idea that he's a top 10 dynasty tight end, I'm just out. Let's talk about a round 1 receiver that most people considered a bust halfway through this year. Let's talk about Quentin Johnston and his big performance in week 18 next. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Growing your small business in 2025 comes down to how well you can hire. And let's face it, better hires start with smarter insights. That's where LinkedIn comes in. With the strongest hiring data available, LinkedIn helps you identify the right candidates, giving you the confidence to make the best decisions for your business. I've used LinkedIn Jobs myself, and I can tell you it is a game changer when it comes to hiring the right fit. Small businesses are wearing a lot of hats, so every hire is crucial. LinkedIn gets that, and that's why they want to connect you with the best candidates using data that you're not going to be able to find anywhere else. From unique skills and interests to the connections you share, LinkedIn helps you find the right person for the job. In fact, 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn has helped them find high-quality candidates. Hire smarter this year and find your next great hire on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That is linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. This episode is brought to you by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions that you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? It's happened to me. I actually had 4 that I didn't even know that I had, but Rocket Money made it so easy to track them down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel unwanted subscriptions. It'll monitor your spending and it'll help you lower your bills so that you can actually grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals that you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of 500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/LockedOn today. That is rocketmoney.com/LockedOn. rocketmoney.com/LockedOn. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Okay, let's talk about Quentin Johnston, who had a career performance in Week 18. The Chargers were trying to win, so this was not a throwaway game. They needed to win to clinch the number 5 seed in the AFC, and Quentin Johnston went off. He had 13 catches for 186 yards, multiple one-handed grabs in this one. There were a couple times where he had some big third down conversions. I thought he looked really good in this game.
I think he looked really good, and you love to see the usage. I mean, 14 targets in a must-win game. Like, that feels pretty darn crucial. And feels like, all right, Justin Herbert's looking at this guy like somebody he trusts. 13 receptions, 14.3 yards per catch. That's better than any average he's had over the past 6 weeks. Didn't score the touchdown in this one, but we know touchdowns have actually not been a problem for him. Eight total on the year. 8 for a guy that everybody had kind of written off. Now, the question is not like, did Quentin Johnston exceed expectations, right? The question is, do you buy into his dynasty value? Because I have looked at, Quentin Johnston. I think he was more of a project than most people gave him credit for coming out of TCU. But kind of like has this freak athletic profile, 40 plus inch vert. Like, we know that he's got this freaky athleticism. We know he's got the size, but I think the biggest problem, even dating back to TCU, was just a lack of consistency, right? And what have we seen to this point? Even in what I would call a successful season for Quentin Johnston, it's been inconsistency, both in terms of his production and what he does with it, as well as the usage. So, like, maybe do you buy into him as like a flex play? I do. The question is he more than that?
So I have not been the biggest Quentin Johnston fan throughout the last couple of years, but I will say I am starting to buy into it a little bit. This year, playing in a new offense, he got banged up earlier in the year, missed a couple of games. Justin Herbert missed some time, right? He was also injured for the first 8 weeks of the season, and you did see that growth: 300 yards more this season, 6 more touchdowns. And again, maybe I'm just being a softie here, but at the end of the Chargers game, he made a big catch to kind of secure the game. And Jim Harbaugh brought him onto the sideline and gave him a big hug, and was like a long hug. And you could tell like he was just really proud of the way that Quentin Johnston fought and improved the season. And I do think he is somebody that's become a big time weapon in their offense. And I'll say my feelings on Johnston will probably depend on what happens in the playoffs. If he has a really strong playoffs, maybe the Chargers won't be all in on trying to get another receiver to add to this offense, like a true number one. And maybe they'll just lean on Ladd and Quentin Johnston. But if he comes up short in these playoffs and it's clear he's a liability, we'll see it. I hate to put everything down to the playoffs, but I'm more excited, but I'm not all the way there yet.
I think that's fair. And I do also think that, okay, if they look at Quentin Johnston through the end of the season, through the playoffs, and say, all right, I think he could be a number two. I think his skill set is different enough from Ladd McConkey's that might just work. Kind of like what the Buffalo Bills are doing, right? Like, they've got kind of all these different archetypes of wide receivers that can fill different roles, and it just kind of blends together. And to accomplish that, I think you need the right coaching staff. I think you need the right OC. I think they have both of those things in place for the type of offense they want to run. So, like, can they make it work with one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL under center? Yeah, like, I think they can make that work. I think the question for me is just like, how do you envision him in your lineup every week? Because I don't think you can trust him as like wide receiver.
No, I think
two,
he's a
three,
flex
wide receiver
play.
four. He's a flex.
He's a flex play until something changes, but we have seen enough from him where you feel like you're probably not getting a zero, right? And maybe there's some more upside. He's only 23, and I got to believe the longer that Justin Herbert is in this offense, the more comfortable he's going to get. And I just believe in Jim Harbaugh to figure things out and to get the most out of these guys. So I am inclined to say go out and try to buy Quentin Johnston this offseason, but I do want to see what happens in the postseason.
What price tag would you put on Quentin Johnston right now? So say you are a believer.
A second round pick.
A second round pick. Okay. Because I will say, so, over on Dynasty League Football, we get access to real life Dynasty trades. And I got to say, the market for Quentin Johnston has been absolutely dead. There have been no trades over the past 20 days or so, which I think is we're probably going to see some movement in that market. But I guess if you're looking for a starting point, and I don't know, second round pick does feel rich for me. But
I probably not at the top. I think once you get to
mid to late second.
Well, I'm going to promote an article that I did for the 33rd team. I did my early Dynasty rookie mock, and there's a pretty clear drop off at pick 15 in your rookie drafts. I think if you're even pick 204, 205 in that range, I would be fine sending a second round pick for Quentin Johnston. But we'll see. Again, I want to see what the playoffs do for Quentin Johnston. If he doesn't need to have monster games, but just be go 5 for 50 against Houston, right? If they play the Chiefs in round 2, make 2 big plays that just get me excited. So we'll see. I wanted to ask you about another player really quickly, Kate, that you actually just brought up. Jonnu Smith finished the year with 88 receptions for 884 yards and 8 touchdowns. I like all the 8s there. Are you buying into Jonnu Smith, who will be 30 next year in this Miami offense?
Kinda. A little bit. Yeah. I think generally speaking, and we can talk about, what we're thinking about Tyreek Hill here coming up in the segments to come. But Johnny Smith is a guy that when you looked at the advanced metrics, actually been one of the more efficient tight ends over the past few seasons. I do think there have been a lot of circumstances that have kind of precluded his relevance and path to a decent enough target share to be relevant on a weekly basis. But like when he had the ball in his hands, he was hitting the mark. And when I actually wrote an article about this ahead of the 2024 season on PFF, talking about like if we're looking strictly at the advanced metrics, Jonnu Smith should be a dynasty buy, and he should be a guy that we look at for a potential age 29 breakout. And it happened. So like, I'm not surprised they finally got him in a situation where he was able to be sort of this release valve in the offense. And maybe there's going to be some targets up for grab here in the near future in Miami. So,
all right, Kay, let's do some do you believe in these week 18 performances. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better than ever with FanDuel because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. You can go bet on the futures market right now, who you believe is going to win the Super Bowl, who you believe is going to win the AFC, NFC. Go check out all of those lines and odds over on FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets. That is FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the new Locked On NFL show. 2 shows every single day, one in the morning with Tyler Rowland, one in the afternoon with Tony Wiggins, available wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Kate, we're going to do a little segment here called Do You Believe? And let's talk about some players that had big week 18 performances, and if you believe in them going into 2025. Let's start with Bryce Young, who scored 5 touchdowns, 3 passing, 2 rushing against the Falcons. Has played really well since coming back into the starting lineup. Do you believe in our guy Bryce?
I believe in the player. I'm not necessarily sure I'm buying the dynasty value because I just don't necessarily know if we're going to see his mobility be a core part of like the planned offense moving forward. I want to see a little bit more of that because that's not necessarily been a big part of his game to this point in his career in college. But I am a believer that this is like he's finding his footing here in the NFL. I think what we've seen since his benching has been a bit of a renaissance, and I'm buying the confidence. I'm buying what we're seeing. He's looked like a different quarterback here. And the reason why I'm like so encouraged is because I really believe in Dave Canales as a head coach. I believe in the Dave Canales system and how that could be favorable for a quarterback. I think Bryce Young has had his struggles, but we're seeing him play with this level of confidence with a group of weapons that I would probably grade bottom 5 in the NFL. Let's get him some more supporting help. Let's get him like a true wide receiver 1. And I think this actually could be a good offense.
Let's get him like, it's going to be nice that he's going to be in the same offense for back-to-back years. Obviously going from college to the NFL is tricky, but he lost Frank Wright in his rookie year. They changed coaches. He got benched. Like just having a full off season with the same coaching staff is going to help. We'll see if they can find a receiver. Xavier Legette, they're hoping can become that guy. But I do agree. Like I don't know about his dynasty value, but I kind of believe in Bryce Young to be like a good NFL quarterback. And if that's the case, I think there's a chance that you could get a lot of the weapons on this offense at a discount this year. And maybe the Panthers offense ends up being the 15th best offense in the league, but they're being valued as the 23rd best. And that's where you can find some value. I want to ask you about another quarterback, Bo Nix, who was 26 of 29 against the Chiefs on Sunday, actually started the game off 17 of 17, 321 passing yards, 4 touchdowns through the air, ran for 47 yards as well. Kate, he finished his rookie season with 34 touchdowns this year. I believe I'm looking at his numbers right now. Threw for 3,700 yards. Also added in a nice 430 yards on the ground. Are you buying into Bo Nix, a dynasty quarterback that's startable every single week?
Yes, and I'm kind of shocked about that. So in the pre-draft process, I was a bit of a skeptic when it comes to Bo Nix. Obviously, he's got that athleticism that I think you're really looking for in terms of, a really startable fantasy asset. Now, obviously, this game has to have an asterisk because,
Yes.
Chiefs not playing their starters. This is kind of one of those weird games, but this isn't the first 4 touchdown, 300 passing yard game from Bo Nix this season. So let's, take that with a grain of salt. I think Bo Nix in general, maybe not a guy that I would believe in every single offensive system, but I think he's right for Sean Payton's. And I think that's probably the most important part. He's got the athleticism and he's found a system that's working for him. He's thrown multiple passing touchdowns in, let's throw out like the first month of his career. September doesn't matter. He's thrown multiple passing touchdowns in most games this year. Something else we've seen as of late, saw kind of a dip in that overall rushing production, maybe halfway through the season. We've also seen him running more over the past month or so. I think he's a guy that, let's say I'm looking for a quarterback. I think he's probably one of the better values in Dynasty right now.
I've always heard how much Sean Payton loves Bo Nix and that he would have drafted Bo Nix number 1 in this class. I don't believe that. That's been reported. Yesterday, he did a third quarter interview with the sideline reporter, and I don't remember who it was, but she asked, how do you think Bo Nix is playing right now? And Sean Payton couldn't stop smiling. And it was like, he's seeing the field so well right now. He's playing with a lot of confidence. It was like a parent watching their kid just dominate in sports. Like they couldn't be more proud. And I think Sean Payton needed Bo Nix to kind of re-energize him a little bit. I think last year was such a drain on Sean Payton with Russell Wilson that he didn't have any fun coaching. And now you're seeing Sean Payton get creative and dial up all these awesome plays. And we'll see what the ceiling is with Bo Nix, but he is somebody that I'm going to try to acquire this offseason because clearly Sean Payton is smitten with him, and I got to believe some moves are coming as well. I've got one more name that I wanted to mention, and I know this is a fan favorite for you. Kayshon Boutte, 7 catches for 117 yards against the Bills in Week 18. He's had a couple of nice games to finish out the year. You buying Kayshon Boutte this offseason?
Yes. It's weird. I think that Kayshon Boutte is a guy who I didn't really know what to do with because he's a player that I really liked in the first couple of seasons at LSU, but saw life kind of catch up to him and the college life and it just didn't work out. But I think what we want to do is buy pieces of the Patriots offense under Drake May. They're getting a fresh start at head coach.
You mean Joe Milton? Oh, sorry.
Joe Milton. QB1, baby. I just think that Kayshon Boutte is a player who's always had the physical abilities. I think he needed the proper structure. And Marcus, this is his second NFL season that is officially in the books. He is 22 years old.
I know.
22. I know. The pre-draft process, it was a wash for him. It was worse than a wash, but I think that if if things had been different for him personally at the age of 20, coming out of the draft, we would probably seen him be a second, third round pick. It just didn't come to fruition. Maybe we're just starting to see him come into his own, mature a bit, and now we can focus on the football of it all.
Yeah, before Gerard Mayo got fired, I think he said that Kayshon Boutte was like one of the most improved players from year 1 to year 2. There's been several reports this year about how much he's matured and how much he's taken the game more seriously. I think going into year 3, hopefully with an improved Drake May, hopefully with an offensive-minded coach that can make this offense more dynamic. Kayshon Boutte, I think, is a really fun stash at the bottom of your dynasty rosters because, Kate, I don't think it would surprise either of us if he was their wide receiver 1 next year.
Yeah, and again, whenever I'm kind of looking at some of these breakouts and questioning, is it the real deal? I think back to like, what is this player's actual profile, right? Like, what do they look like at their core? Are they kind of defying expectations in too large a way? I don't think Kayshon Boutte really is. Because again, like we saw very early on, he broke out year 1 at LSU. He was a big product of that offense as a true freshman.
Yep.
Which we know LSU wide receiver U.
Yeah, just buy all the LSU receivers. You're going to be fine.
Yes, that's like life rule number 1. And I think we're going to be just fine in Dynasty.
All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen every single day. Go check out the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Modjuk. I'm at Marcus_Mosier, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.